And that leads us into star down, star up, star down, whatever you want. Brought to you by Crown Royal, proud whiskey sponsor of the National Football League. And that tied it at 7. It was kind of a weird throw where it just seemed like it ended up in the chest of Jalen Tolbert. But that was a hell of a response there from Cooper Rush and the Cowboys offense after throwing the pick 6. And that's Jalen Tolbert playing with a broken finger, tying the game at 7.
Yeah, you end up, I think you watch a lot of Cooper Rush and you think to yourself, that was a weird throw. And so, yeah, so a lot of those end up that way. But look, yeah, 3 straight weeks with a touchdown. The thing, I was talking with somebody yesterday.
Well,
yeah, just somebody that gets a well now. I was talking to somebody yesterday in the press box and we were just discussing Tolbert. And they said, I'm not going to out them because I don't know if they say this publicly. But they were like, you know what? He's like, I don't think the Tolbert hate is totally deserved. He's like, that's my hot take that if I said it, consistently enough. He's like, because I think
something someone should put their name next.
No,
to
I think he has. I don't know. So I'm not gonna. If he's got that as a take, he's coming with this week. I don't want to throw it out there for him. But he was saying that, he's not a black hole. Like, he makes plays for you. He had the Pittsburgh touchdown. He had that touchdown yesterday. He had the touchdown against Tampa Bay. Like, he is somebody who has made plays. It's just, is he a prolific, 80 catch guy? No. Has he lived up to his draft position? Probably not. But he's not an awful football player, is the way he looked at it.
I thought you were suffering from jet lag on the way back when you sent star up, star down. You put Jalen Brooks, and I went and box score. I was like, no, he meant Jalen Tolbert. And then I asked you this morning to clarify. No, you're still going with Jalen Brooks.
Jalen Brooks, looking a 41-7 game. I think any star up could be questioned.
I didn't even realize Jalen Brooks played. He had 1 catch for 12 yards on 1 target, and you're going star up.
So when you are eliminated, part of what do we want to see these final
Wait,
few
who did you say before the year that you believed in more, Brooks or Tolbert?
Started with Tolbert, changed to Brooks.
Okay. Now it makes sense. Go ahead.
I started with Tolbert. So this is still me admitting I'm wrong. See how I turned that around on you?
Go.
Brooks, he's somebody who I like the competitiveness. I like the way that the last 2 training camps he's shown when we're out there at those practices. He's the best ball bag. He's the best bad ball catcher.
Best ball bag.
He's the best bad ball catcher on the team in the training camp sessions he has been. He's somebody who adjusts to the ball really well. He's tough. He's probably the best contested catcher right there with CD.
He had 1 catch for 12 yards.
No, I'm just talking about in general when you watch the way
this isn't generalities from training camp, star up, star down. Yes, this from the Eagle game.
It is in this sense. When we're watching these games where they're eliminated, I need to see, all right, the guys who are getting opportunities to play now when they're out of contention, who's actually building on things and showing me something for next year. Jalen Brooks in very limited time, that first pass, he has a really great route. Probably the best route anybody ran yesterday on the team was this first down catch that he made. And I'll show it to you when we get to the break. The way he sells the vertical, the way he snapped back on the hitch and then jumped up and attacked the football and came back down. And then the very next play was the Turpin stumble where he almost scored on the carry. And Brooks, the very next play after running that route, does a fantastic job running towards the center of the field and picking off the safety and opening it up to where if Turpin would have scored, Brooks would have been the block we were talking about. And so I thought, just when I see those little samples of, all right, he's starting to put it together, because there was the catch before halftime, the 41-yarder against Washington. There was the touchdown catch against Carolina in the end zone. Like, I'm starting to see enough of these things where I'm going, okay, in small pockets, he's building this consistency that we've needed to see from him, where he could be a legitimate starting NFL receiver, I think.
The star down, obviously, is for Cooper Rush offensively. It's pretty obvious as well who gets the big star down on D.
Pickett in the gun. Snap is back. They rush him. He avoids the pressure. He throws the left side of the end zone. Wide open touchdown. Running away from Booth. Devontae Smith. The Eagles have regained the lead.
Andrew Booth. It was a rough one.
And
he had a penalty earlier on the drive, which I think Greg Olsen thought was questionable. Are you about to defend Andrew Booth?
No, I'm going to take it I'm definitely going to say Andrew Booth was terrible. But I'm going to take it a direction maybe that is a little off the beaten path. When you watch the Eagles clearly identify Andrew Booth, there he is, go after him. We're going to do this. Did you feel like Kellen Moore ever did that in Dallas?
I Initially, just off the top of my head, I would say no.
I think there are a lot of days we would come in here and go like, why don't you take advantage of this? Why don't you take advantage of this? Where we didn't feel like he would.
Like Zach and Broadus started off with a little side shot towards Kellen Moore in the post game, saying that's the Kellen Moore we remember because they're coming out not running Saquon.
Right. Yeah. That was a rough first 3 plays where it's like, yeah, let's go with Kenny Pickett 3 times on a rollout. But when you see Kellen Moore look for those matchups and attack them.
Yeah.
And you see certain things. Does that start make you questioning what is Dak seeing in his progressions? Like, is Kellen Moore trying to target certain things when he was here, and was Dak just not going to it? Is this a Dak read
all I
problem?
heard was, coverage dictates where you go. You don't dictate that yourself. Coverage dictates where you go. That was a big thing from Kellen all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you remember Mike McCarthy said Zach Martin to right tackle, that's fantasy football nonsense. He said that in 2020. And then since then, he said best 5. The reason he said it was fantasy football nonsense is because Zach Martin didn't want to play tackle. And he was covering for Zach Martin. He was taking the arrows for it, which is admirable. It makes me wonder that when those questions come up, is Kellen Moore taking arrows for Dak? Where it's like, yeah, look, we wanted Dak to target certain things. He didn't do it. Like, I can only tell him, I can only
Why would he not?
It's just if Dak in general reads something different or doesn't trust the progression to just go and target it, it may be that way. Where it could be designed, or that Kellen's intention is let's look for this opportunity, and it's just Dak's not going there with the progression.
Devontae scores the touchdown on Booth. Again, penalty earlier in that drive on Andrew, and then he gives up the 50-yarder to Devontae right before half. So big star down.
17 coverage snaps. He was targeted 7 times. 5 receptions allowed, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 153.3 passer rating.
Woo!
And you remember this was the first game he had to play a lot of snaps was against the Giants in week 4. And you remember he was so bad in that game that's when they put Amani Oruwariye out there for the first time. Was because he couldn't cover anybody.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing what happens when he gets exposed out there again. But star up. I'm gonna go. I'm digging deep in my bag.
Oh,
here.
wait, who had half a catch? Who had half a sack? That Bobby's gonna throw out awards to now after the Jalen Brooks Award.
Linval Joseph and his 2 tackles in this game is getting a star up because Saquon Barkley had problems running the ball in the first half.
Yeah,
this felt like a game where he was gonna have 3 yards of carry. In fact, I think at halftime he was at like 2 or maybe 1.9 or something. They were doing a good job, and when they would do a good job, it was Linval Joseph plugging up the middle and causing problems and disrupting things. And I thought when he was in there, he's been a good run defender all season. When he was in there in that game yesterday, which was a lot of those run snaps, they were great. In fact, I saw yesterday when he was on the field, Linval Joseph, they were allowing how many yards per carry? They were allowing 2.9 yards per carry on the 14 run snaps that he was on there. When he was off the field, they were allowing 5 yards per carry. So Linval Joseph, I thought, was impressive. He's one of these under the radar veteran additions they made in training camp when they were kind of scrambling, who has really worked out.
My other star ups defensively were the linebackers with Kendricks and Leofau. Kendricks had a 3rd and 3 tackle that forced a punt. No tush push taking place. 2 3-and-outs to start. I had Kendrick's name next to a lot of those things that were taking place. And then Leofau, feels like Leofau gets away with a penalty every game. Feels like he got away with another one yesterday, but he was just sitting there flying around, and I noticed him. I also had a question mark on Deron Bland versus AJ until the touchdown that AJ threw into the stands that he later had to trade the signed jersey for. But this was all Devontae Smith and no A.J. Brown, and it felt like Deron Bland was the one that was responsible for that. So I had some star-ups defensively there.
And Bland was following him. So yesterday, wherever A.J. Brown went, they moved Deron Bland over there. So he was tracking him and did a good job. Late in the game, when it's kind of already out of hand, they get the one throw to the corner of the end zone that A.J. Brown doesn't get his second foot down, the mini OBJ catch that he had with the one hand that didn't count. And then they just go back to the well 2 plays later and go, all right, let's try it again. And it worked. And so, that wasn't great near the end. But overall, I thought Deron Bland played well.
Star down to the show and fan favorite.
So the Cowboys start at the 30. Play action fake and a bootleg to the right by Rush. And he threw the ball into a crowd.
Ball's out.
It looks like a catch and a fumble. And the Eagles believe they've got the ball at the Dallas 38.
Ferg with the fumble. Jake Ferguson right after a Devontae Smith touchdown. So Smith scores to make it 14-7. Ferg fumbles, part of that second quarter collapse. second half, you could call it collapse as well. But Broadus and Zach were just saying, man, it just feels like, an instance of Ferguson trying to do too much in what has been, and I thought Walchuk put it correctly, a letdown year for Ferguson following what happened last season.
There's something just not right about the connection between Cooper Rush and Jake Ferguson. Or not even the connection, just the no desire to look that way from Cooper Rush. I feel like when we talk about when backup quarterbacks step in, a lot of times we're talking about running backs and tight ends. Who's your safety blanket? Who's your security guy here? Ferguson has not been his security guy at all. These are these are Jake Ferguson's numbers in the games Dak played this year. 6 for 95, 7 for 49, 6 for 70, 3 for 11, 6 for 23, 7 for 71. Cooper Rush takes over. 4 for 24, 1 for 11, 3 for 32, 2 for 23, 6 for 40, 3 for 18. He was getting 5-6 catches a game with Dak. Now it's down to about 2. And yesterday when they threw that pass to Mingo, Ferguson was open. Ferguson had broken towards the middle field, and he just couldn't get it. That was the first time he finally touches the ball yesterday, was when he fumbles. And he's trying to make something happen, like you mentioned there. But it's been a disappointing year for Ferguson. He's been one of the little bit of letdown guys. I also think, given what we heard him saying about the concussion, and how that rattled him, I'm not surprised that maybe he's not playing at his best.
Where was Micah yesterday?
Twitter will tell you who's being held, and that was the problem. He was being held, and that's apparently.
I'm gonna go for Micah.
I don't know if it was just an earlier game.
I don't know. I'm gonna go as Micah for Halloween one year and just do the like this with the arm glued around my neck, which Twitter loves to point to, but I didn't notice him at all.
You need to have a shirt too that says "We're a damn good football team" as you're being held back. But no, he was not great in this game. He's definitely a star down for me. Didn't make enough of an impact rushing the passer when they really needed him to. And in run defense, he had a couple different there were at least 2, and I'll see it on Post Hut today, but there were at least 2 plays I know on this one where he had bad angles and missed tackles, and it led to extra yardage. And so I thought Micah Parsons was that was probably his worst game of the year, I felt like. Now I may watch back and change my mind completely, because there have been a lot of games where he affects it more when I go back and look at it. But yeah, I felt that this was a down game for him. And he looked like, Calvin Watkins pointed this out, he looked like he was a little banged up walking back to the locker. Not obvious with it, but definitely didn't look like he was 100%.
So I had a tee time planned that was tentative for yesterday if I was going to get cleared for to play, because I had some tendon issues in my forearm. So I haven't played in a while. And but hopefully Kevin be feeling better. He's just under the weather, but was needed to come in. I was like, all right, I'm already going out there. So I had the iPad hooked up, in the cart to watch the game. The pick 6 happens. I'm like, okay, but then the Cowboys go down and score. And then about 3 series later, I was like, you know what? I should be paying closer attention to this game, considering I'm going to be talking about it tomorrow. And the guys just looked at me and like, why?
Yeah, what do you want us, like, if you're listening, what do you want us to break down about 41-7? Cooper Rush, who, if he is here next year, has to play 4 to 6 games because we know Dak's going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But like a lot of it is like CD Lamb's not out there, so I don't even know if Rico Dowdle's going to be on the team next year. It's really tough to watch it from a developmental standpoint when you're just like, who am I watching that could be a potential star next year? Overshone's obviously out, like he was trending towards like maybe being a star. So,
how do you get juiced up to be like, you know what? I want to know how much depth we're going to have next year by watching some of these guys. And I think, and that's honestly the only question that I would even have for this team, but it's not sexy. It's not drawing my eyeballs. And that's ultimately what it is about with the Cowboys, is it not?
Yes. Yeah. Now, as you said that, the Cowboys are horse manure almost every year in the preseason, right? I get that they're not trying, and a lot of teams aren't trying nowadays.
And the Ravens are 4-0 in the preseason every year, and they're not great every year, but it's not going to tell you.
We are 6 weeks away from Ranger spring training.
Mm-hmm.
Now, CY, Chris Young, and other people, it's not just him, will tell you, the only thing about spring training that matters, it shows your organizational depth. winning and losing games in spring training shows your organizational depth. It's really not about Corey Seager or Nathan Eovaldi or Jacob deGrom. You want them to come out healthy and ready to go. I don't care if Corey Seager goes 0 for 40. I don't care if Jacob deGrom gives up 20 runs in 20 innings, as long as he's throwing the ball the way that we know he's supposed to throw. And I know those are extremes, but it's like what spring training shows you. And I do think this is what, you kind of alluded to it during crosstalk, and I'm adding to it here, is what we see in preseason is crap football, but what we're seeing is the depth of an organization, players 30-ish through 70-ish, and I know some of them won't even make the team. We're seeing, hey, how deep is your team? Can you handle injuries? That's what training camp is showing you, and we find almost every year, going over your numbers, of 32% of the cap is given to 4 guys, 31% of the cap is given to 8 guys.
With Philadelphia,
on Philadelphia, is you see that this is a super crappy team with depth. And so why watch yesterday once it's 24-7 at halftime? Because you've seen in training camp and you've seen in preseason football games, this team has no depth. They don't have NFL players on their team, players 40 through 80 in preseason. Nobody wants. The Cowboys have to keep 13 of them, but nobody really wants those players because the Cowboys aren't a depth organization.
That is the biggest question I have coming into this season, because you're like, okay, Jonathan Hankins, Stephon Gilmore, Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, Neville Gallimore. Individually, you look at them and you're like, well, this person was going to cost this. This person was going to cost that. Right? We had all these discussions. Tony Pollard's a great example, right? Didn't want to pay the money for the position. But as we were going through the offseason, I know CA and I would talk about this on Saturdays. We'd be like, okay, you realize that you need human beings to actually, fill those spots. Who's going to do that? And we'll talk with Stephen Jones at noon today. And part of the question I have is, why you didn't replace those guys? You already had players on your team that are now taking those positions. Chauncey Golston is going to come in and be, a heavy player with that. He'd only started 3 games, in his career leading up to this year. So it isn't that big of a surprise to me that we are where we are, because a lot of the guys, if you had 12 wins last year, 3rd consecutive year, a lot of those guys were all a part of it. And like I said, individually, you could say, well, it didn't mean much to, like we didn't want to pay for that or this or that. But then once it becomes a bigger group, now you have got a problem. And how is it going to get any better? Because if you are too tight in order to keep those players, who are you bringing in for next year?
Right.
How is this going to get any better? I don't know how it does.
Your 9 draft picks, approximately, right? Because they have extras, but it's very tough to ask
Mike,
college
that is why
kids.
I have been saying to trade Micah. Not because Micah is not going to be, maybe the best defensive player in the game.
Okay.
No, he absolutely is. To me, my opinion is you're 4 guys away from being 4 guys away. And the only way to accumulate more players and talent at those positions, if you're going to pay Micah Parsons along with Dak and CD and Trayvon Diggs and the issue that they have, you better do it with rookies, right?
I'm with you, except this. We see this team without Micah Parsons. It was one of the worst defenses I've ever seen in my life as a Cowboys watcher, I will say. I've been a fan for a long time. I don't call myself a Cowboys fan anymore.
But it was pretty bad when he was in there, too, earlier this year.
So where I'm going back to is 2020. It was a pathetic defense, and they draft Micah Parsons. I'm like, this is going to be that was pathetic. One guy can't help, and this was before we saw Micah play in the NFL, and it turned out to be a pretty good defense. And I will disagree somewhat with what you just said, because I feel like all of a sudden this pathetic defense, and I did see watching the game yesterday, I believe that they are now 0-9 when they give up 27 or more points. So all of their losses, they've given up 27 or more points. So I was like, wow, every game they lose, they're giving up pretty much 30 or more points. But I do think when Micah came back from injury this year, all of a sudden the defense turned a corner and was an average NFL defense. They still have their deficiencies, and to your point, there's no way to fix it. But I feel like, to your opinion, if you get rid of Micah Parsons, and I know what you're saying, get rid of him, like get 2 firsts and a third or something like that.
I almost like to lose Micah Parsons as a name. It's like, I want to get rid of an asset in order to bring back in multiple players. If it could be somebody else, I would say somebody else. And
I'm with you because you're saying Micah Parsons isn't the problem, but he's maybe the only solution
to the problem.
Nobody wants Dak Prescott.
You nailed it. That's it. Micah Parsons is the biggest part of your defense, no question about it. And you're going to be way worse without him. But the problem is, to me, is now you are compounding the issue of what you already had coming into this year, of the cap hit that you have with Dak, with Diggs, with CD, and with Micah. Now, are you going to be able to manipulate that money to open things up? Well, according to, Stephen, well, I asked him, about this at noon and how it's going to get any better if you're going to have to be, what do you say, tighten up the old belt? How? Then how is it going to get any better? I don't see it. It's not just injuries. It's not just injuries because we saw before injuries happened that it was awful the first month, right?
Yes.
That's where I'm
yes, because the Saints game, yes. The Baltimore game, I'm forgetting if that was week 3, I believe.
I think
it was, because they were 0-2, Baltimore, and that's when they get their win and they destroy the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys make a late comeback, almost, make it a game, but get destroyed for most of the game. So I'm with you there. But this is the way the Cowboys have done it pretty much since the salary cap was instituted in 93, 94. And Jerry and Steven will look at it and say, well, we've been successful. We make the playoffs. I don't know. I'm going to say approximately 50% of the time under this system. And that is probably, if you look at the odds in the NFL, that is barely beating the odds. You're above average in making the playoffs over the last, let's say, 25 years. I'm not saying well above average, but probably barely above average. For them, that's ultimate success. So why change something if I'm making the playoffs approximately 50% of the time, getting my ass handed to me every time I make it? But if I'm making the playoffs, and that's the only real goal of the Jones family, because it's the number one topic in all of the sports world is the Dallas Cowboys. As long as they make the playoffs 50% of the time, why change my formula?
Yeah, well, and here's where in the prior 3 years and for a good portion of the team's history, or certainly since I've been here, the only times that you have had really awful seasons, there's been one thing in common. Quarterback has been knocked out for the year. Cowboys don't have really a lot of, at least in the last decade or so, a ton of 8-8 or, 7-9 or, however it was back when it was 16, now 17, right?
Right.
It would be extremes. 10, 11, 12 wins, or the quarterback would go down and they'd be awful, right? That's how it would happen. I can't fault them for how they've been able to put a roster together. Last year's roster was good enough to win a Super Bowl, in my opinion. I think the 2 years prior, the same thing. And we've seen them in off seasons, like that one off season where they got Hooker, Curse, Keanu Neal, those guys that were kind of on bargains. And they end up being, some really key defensive players for you. It wasn't their fault that they lost in the playoffs. I mean, maybe if you want to go to some abstract, because it's a country club.
Was that losing to Garoppolo?
I don't know.
Is that the year you're talking about?
Well, no. I mean, all 3 of those years. Like, they went 12 games.
I thought you were talking about, like, the first year they brought him in, it wasn't the defensive fault that they lost, bringing in those defensive players because Dak played.
That was Micah's first year? Was that his rookie year?
I believe so. Because you lose to Garoppolo.
Yeah.
Then
Purdy, I think.
And then you lose to Purdy. And then you lose last year to Jordan Love. So those are your last 3 playoff appearances.
And
you beat
those 3 losses.
87-year-old Tom Brady.
Yeah. Those 3 losses with the win in there, the playoffs, I think is a completely different conversation. They should feel like, hey, we had the product that we put out there, the talent that we gave or we had accumulated and put together was good enough to do it. And it didn't happen. And it was almost to me like, well, now here we have to pay the consequences to it. And I go, all right, if you really don't want to rebuild.
I have a question off of what you just said.
Okay. I was just going to say, if you don't want to rebuild and you want to turn it around really quick, that's the way to do it with Micah. I wish I had other answers to it.
Do you believe the Jones family got arrogant after going 12-5 for 3 straight years? Or, that they were like, it doesn't matter what we do. We have the core. Now it's just about winning in the playoffs. We have a 12-5 team no matter what we do.
It's changed.
Did they get arrogant in the offseason and just go, we're 12-5, don't worry. We're establishing that every year.
I honestly thought Jerry was pissed. And I thought when he said we're all in, I said, think about what all in means. When you go all in, you've shoved your chips in. You don't have anything left. And I thought maybe it was Jerry going, yeah, I've already put everything all in here. Now you guys need to figure it out. And that's why there wasn't a lot of moves and all that. Now, obviously, stemming off of, the last 2 weeks talking about how, okay, all in was getting CD and Dak done. That's the way I looked at it. Could there be an element to that of saying now it's arrogance? I don't know what it is. I know that it was not smart because it just did not pull in enough talent behind the guys that you needed, or just for contributors. Hankins, Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler, how good they look last night. Can you imagine them? They're not world beaters. I see Alec back there shaking his head, right? Those are guys that you had on your defense as part of your rotation to make plays. And now with the injuries that you had this year with Lawrence, you don't have those guys anymore. And that's why they sucked even before, Lawrence and Micah went out. That's how I kind of stood with it.
I can't believe what Kenny Pickett did yesterday. Can't believe what Cooper Rush did yesterday. There's something about the Eagles.
Yeah.
What is it about the green color? AT&T Stadium or in filthy, Cooper Rush is the worst version of himself when he sees those Eagles flying around.
Can I ask you, since you're kind of an analytics kid, you always ask me about if they should go for it or not.
Yeah.
Okay, the pass that went down the field on 3rd and 1 that was incomplete from Mingo.
I know you didn't like that call.
All right. I didn't like it because there were 2 other dudes open on the play.
Ferguson and Zeke, right?
There's actually 3 of them that were open.
Okay.
There are 3 of them that were open on the play. But I'm going to ask you this question. You throw that pass. You throw the double move pass on 3rd and 1.
Because you're
it's
gonna...
fourth. It's going to be 4th and 1 on your 41. What do you think the analytics tell you to do on 4th and 1 from your own 41?
I'm saying that's a green light. Go for it.
Punt. I am not calling. I'm only calling that double go move and calling that play if I don't get it. I'm going for it.
I'm going for it. Right. I was surprised that they didn't.
The metrics told you to punt in that situation. Now, here's one.
That means the metrics tell you to not throw the deep ball on 3rd and 1.
That's exactly right. This is what's funny, though. On 4th and 2 from their own 17 in the first quarter, that was a toss-up. That's 4th and 2 from your own 17. It's a toss-up on the metrics, whether to go for it or not.
On your own 17?
On your own 17.
At what point in the game was that?
First quarter.
First quarter.
It was 3:03 left in the first.
This doesn't make sense. How could they be telling you to go for it?
It's a toss-up.
Okay, how could they be telling you toss up on 4th and 2 and telling
at your own 17?
At your own 17.
But 4th and 1, it's actually the metrics because of the ball. I guess they got some way. It was actually 4th. It was 1.6 yards needed for the first. This is where these officials toss the ball around and they screw you.
Right.
And you're like, oh, it's short. And now you know why it's short.
Yeah.
Because it's not 4th and 1. It's really fourth point. It's 1.6 yards is what you need. But I just found it funny because I was thinking, if you're going to call that play, that double move like that, and it's incomplete, aren't you going? Aren't you going for it if you don't get it?
100%. That's the only reason why you make that call on 3rd and 1 is because hey, back pocket, we'll still have a 4th and 1 scenario. That's like football 101.
He had Ferguson underneath. He had Zeke underneath. He had
Mingo.
Oh no, he had Mingo. It was all about Mingo on that. It was when you watch the tape, it's like, we're not throwing the ball to Zeke, or we're not throwing the ball to Ferguson here.
No intention.
That ball is going. He had Cooks on the other side running a double move that was open. He threw the ball to Mingo instead of throwing the ball. He chose Mingo over Cooks, and both of them had separation on the play. Or he could have got the first down and then lived to fight another day. But he didn't do that. He tried to throw the ball, and McCarthy said the wind caught it, and
the wind was catching a lot yesterday.
Wind was catching a lot.
Not for old McKean and for Pickett, but the wind
McKee.
The wind was definitely affecting our man Cooper Rush. All right, it is the GBag Nation on a Back to Reality Cowboys Monday. Welcome into the program. We got Lucius Alexander back holding it down in the Pim Cup. GBag of the day coming up in 25 minutes. LA Live commercial free 540. Brian brought us the Super Bowl winning scout. I know you got your Krusty's Corners. We got two Krusty's Corners today.
We do.
On a Cowboy Monday.
I got a lot to talk about too.
320 and 520. That was just
you got a lot of Krusty Corners.
Got a lot of Krusty Corners.
That's
hey,
true.
Lucius, you got to try this pretzel from the stadium in Philly.
I'm not joking you, Lucius.
I got half of it coming your way.
It's here from Philly?
It is here from Philly.
It traveled well, is what you're telling me?
Yeah, it traveled in this bag from the press box at the link. I'm showing
press box.
The press box at the link. Might be the best pretzel you ever have in your life.
And I'll co-sign it.
Okay, I'll give it a shot.
I just got a piece of that thing.
Eric over there looking like a squirrel.
Broadus was so hyped about this pretzel, and he was having FOMO that he wasn't in the press box yesterday while we're doing the pregame show. Yeah. And so the legendary Bob Thomas
was like listening to the show.
Cowboy statistician.
The guy is unbelievable. Got a Ziploc bag and brought two pretzels back. Eric and I punished one. You got to try this, Lucius.
Thank God. I thought you said Bobby Belt for a second. I was getting concerned. I was like, he'll put it in his pocket and just walk off. I got you guys.
Bobby brought it in. But Bob Thomas, I want to thank Bob. I'm sure he's listening right now. One of the best human. Everybody needs a Bob Thomas in their life.
Totally.
Somebody that's thinking about you.
You often said that.
I prefer a Dave.
Dave? Dave would be good to have, too.
Dave Thomas.
Yeah, Dave. Oh. Yeah. I see where he's going. He's just got a winning single in his life. Is what yeah, he's back.
It is great to have Lucius back in the saddle. It really is here. And we're loaded. We're loaded. We got to say congratulations to Sean Sharif winning the Fan Fantasy League Championship, the title. His team just, they
no CeeDee Lamb,
peaked at the right time. No CeeDee Lamb for me. He had Burrow. I mean, he had just some disgusting performances yesterday of dudes just totally lighting it up. Congratulations to him. The
Burrow,
I want more.
Saquon Barkley.
Yeah. He just had it was a freak show afternoon for his squad. They scored like almost 200 points. So in fantasy, if you're touching close to 200, you're absolutely dominant. So congratulations to Sean and his squad. Now we had I thought the Kenny Pickett thing was that was the headliner from the game. Take away all the other crap. That play right there was absolutely ridiculous. I did love that Brandon Cooks on the second drive of the game getting a first down on third down and then paying homage to CeeDee Lamb with the finger sniff.
Oh, there you go.
Getting that first down. That was an emphatic finger sniff, and I know that was to his guy, 88, who we missed desperately yesterday on the field.
I think they missed it.
He's wiping his nose. It's a nose wipe.
He's wiping. He's not sniffing?
Yeah, that's like 8th gradish.
You don't think he's sniffing
Smell
that
my finger? Yeah, it's definitely a nose wipe.
Okay, so he's wiping that nose.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Well, thank you, Lucius, for that clarification.
We would
Either way, homage to old CeeDee Lamb.
We love Chris Strong, but if he was behind the glass there, we would have never known that.
No, that's true. That is not any editorial
Chris does a hell of a job.
Yeah, he does.
But Lucius brings the knowledge.
He does.
With
he
everything,
does. Yeah. So that stood out as well.
Hysterical, bro. That's hilarious.
But that game was that was a beatdown. That was tough to witness, and they were getting it done. I mean, they're at their third string quarterback.
You know where I thought the game swung? And tell me if you think I'm wrong about this, because I am quite a bit. I think the Calcaterra catch for the play that he made.
Huge grab.
34 yards. I think Philly's offense was kind of
they were sputtering
around a little bit.
Well, they come out passing the ball, which was hilarious.
Not sure if they want to run. They hand it to Barkley a couple times. Maybe they don't have great success. Then all of a sudden, Calcaterra makes the and you know what? It's a really, really good pass. And I think, Izzy was in good shape. I mean, Calcaterra just made a hell of a play. But from that point on, it kind of woke Philadelphia's offense up a little bit. And another thing that woke them up was that they knew every route and every catch that Smith had in that game yesterday was against Booth.
Oh, they had him singled out from the jump.
They schemed that.
Had him singled out from the jump.
Every route they wanted him to run, they managed. But Dallas was playing. Dallas took Bland and put him over there on Brown, and they thought Brown was more of a factor. I just think that Brown's a hell of a player. Don't get me wrong.
It's a true pick your poison. One of those guys is going to completely go off on you, and the other one's still going to have a nice day.
Don't you find a way to try and double? Then if that's the case, if you're putting Booth over there on Smith, aren't you shading Hooker over there a little bit?
We talked about it in the pregame show. Wherever Booth is, he needs to be the one getting the help.
Yeah.
That should have been, whether it's Brown, Smith, Calcaterra, name that person. If Booth is covering the guy, he needs to get some help here.
Yeah, it didn't happen that way.
No, it did not. It did not. I think that was, and that was a play to Calcaterra, the one that you're talking about being a bit of a turning point there. That was a couple of times you send a blitz, they drop Micah on the play, they bring a blitz. I know Jordan Lewis was involved, and you can't get home.
Yeah,
where was Micah yesterday?
They did a great job. Oh, they chipped him all day in that game, by the way. Like Barkley late in that game, and like the play that Pickett got knocked out. He threw the touchdown to Brown and then got knocked out.
Yep.
Like Micah got like rib shot and like kind of doubled over, and then the play was still going. He got away from Lane Johnson and knocked Pickett down. But man, they put Calcaterra in the backfield, and they put Calcaterra in the backfield at the time and went across the pocket on a chip on Micah. In that game, they were not going to let Micah Parsons win that football game yesterday on defense.
Okay, and if he took a rib shot earlier, I know like when he was walking into the locker room, it looked like
he took a big time rib shot. Like Barkley got him in the left side of the ribs. He was trying to get around Lane Johnson, and he's just about to clear, and Barkley like lowers his head, shoulder into the left side of Micah, and it stunned him pretty good.
Well, this is the clip and the quote that is circulating now all over the internet about the way Micah described yesterday's game.
Take away the scoreboard, it was about five plays that decided this game.
Now that is a small little clip from a 60-second response where he was trying to just defend the fact that the defense, hey, it's a couple of plays here, otherwise he felt good about their performance. But at no point can you ever use the words if you take away the scoreboard. So that's all. You get back in the lab.
Scoreboard was not good.
You remove that. Every time you're at the microphone, those words are never coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
If you just removed the scoreboard, it was only about 5 plays.
Yeah.
And they did a nice job in that first half trying to bottle up Barkley, but then the second half, it was just,
you knew he was going to get the ball.
It's 10, 11 plays, and they're all runs.
The second quarter was bad. Bad for your offense, bad for your defense. Heck, one of your better plays was a 60-some-odd yard kickoff return, and, you get a holding call on that. That wiped out a bunch of hidden yards. Dallas was going to have to kind of win that game like they won the game against the Commanders. You're going to have to get some special teams plays, was going to have to maybe get a stop or two, maybe a turnover. They got killed on the turnover battle. We all know that.
Yeah. Oh, the turnovers.
Fisher's had a rough day too. We'll get in that Krusty's Corner because there was a couple of plays that Dallas should have been called, but Dallas got away with a couple too. With a couple of they got rid of a face masking call. They got away
Eric
with.
Kendricks.
Yeah.
Or that was early in the game. And what about the Leofow play? Because a lot of people were talking about like it's the second play of the game or whatever, and Leofow just shoves Devontae Smith. I thought that was that's
outside
a legal
the
play.
pocket. Outside the pocket.
Outside the pocket, and it's only a couple of yards down the field. It's not even. And the ball's not in the air.
Yeah, the ball's not in the air. Quarterback is outside the pocket. Yeah, you can destroy receivers on the outside. I think Greg Olson missed that one last night. He was like, oh no, he got shoved. No, it's if you're outside the pocket, and that means you don't know if the quarterback is going to become a runner. Ball hadn't left his hands. You could go ahead and start wasting guys on the outside.